working on part 4 today, and our part 4 homework is due tonight, exam tomorrow, as well as that second half of discussion 2. So let's take a look at this calculator. So we started this calculator last time together for the actual tax code, which is all these different tax rates. And last time I mentioned how in part 4, there's actually 3 cases we have to worry about. And so what we did was we created an if statement for this column that we drug all the way down, and then a second if statement for this column to drag all the way down to deal with the fact that we have those 3 cases. Now, if you're still sort of getting started on that, best place to start is to check out the lecture from yesterday. But if you're still stuck, let me know and we can talk about it a little bit more. But anyway, I think we've talked about most of those steps already. So now let's talk about some of the questions. We have like the straightforward, create a data table for this graph one. That one's not too bad. Then in question 5, 6, and 7, they're all actually the exact same question. They're trying to say, what does this income up here have to be so that we get 10% here? So in question 5, they wanted us to look at this graph and just, that's not the right graph, and ballpark it. So you can see like 10% is somewhere around there. You could kind of slide to the right and then guess it's somewhere in this vicinity, which is okay, but we can be more accurate than that. What else? In question 6, they say, well, what if you just try guess and check? Well, now that we have an idea where to start based off our graph, we could type that in, see that we're still pretty far away. Try another one, getting closer, so on and so forth, which is fine. And then finally in question 7, they say, okay, actually just use GoalSeek because it's significantly faster. So GoalSeek was something we introduced last week. If you missed that lecture, but let's walk through those steps again one more time. The first sort of step that you've hopefully already done once is set up the options in Excel to make sure that it gets as close as possible. Then we're going to click on this cell that we want to be 10%. Data, what if analysis, GoalSeek. We can either type 10% into this second one because we want to set this cell equal to 10%, or you can type 0.1. What you cannot do is just type 10. That will not work. And then the cell that we're changing is where we were making our guesses, in my case, B1. Once I hit OK, it's going to plug a bunch of stuff in there. It's pretty quick. And it found that solution, which I never would have found using guess and check. And we got exactly 10%, which is what we were looking for. So that's question 7. So if you want, you can just skip questions 5 and 6 and go straight to this real one, question 7, where we use GoalSeek. One thing that's a little bit weird is you don't find your answer in the bottom where you normally would look. That's the answer in the top left. We already knew this guy in the bottom right was going to be 10%. We wanted to know that number. Then there was a follow-up question 8 that wanted us to compare this actual tax code calculator to this guy that we made in part 3, the HCC3 calculator. And so one way we could do that is we could set up a little data table again. You'll notice I've gone actually all the way to 200,000 by increments of 1,000, just to be a little bit more precise. And then we do our data table just like we normally would. Whoops, that's the wrong button. There is one little mistake I have in here that I want to do on purpose, but normally what we would do at this stage is say, oh, okay, we have a column of stuff. So I go to my column cell. I want to plug all these in, but where do I plug them in? Do I plug them in here or do I plug them in there? Well, let's try the first one and see what happens. Okay, these numbers are all right, but these never change because, right, I was never utilizing the second input. So I like to do what's called linking these two calculators together. And instead of having two separate inputs, what I can do, instead of having equals 100,000 in here, I can go into the cell, type equals, reference B1, and now whenever B1 changes, so will this guy. So really, B1 is the only input cell, and it will directly affect both calculators. So I fixed that, I linked that guy, and now my data tables are both accurately calculating, and I can graph these things. I'm going to zoom in for a second because it's hard to see this intersection point, but we can see that somewhere around, I don't know, 40,000 they intersect, and then the actual tax code takes a while to catch up. Somewhere around there, 130, 140,000, it finally catches up. And so that's how I would answer that last question in the workbook. Just make a big data table that goes, 0 to 200,000 and graph them on top of each other, and you can see where they intersect. Now, if you want to know precisely where they intersect, I can show you that real quick. You don't technically need to. These questions are more often than not multiple choice, but here's a really cool trick you can do with GoalSeek. GoalSeek cannot say, hey, make this cell equal to that cell. GoalSeek is not able to do that. All it can do is say things like, make this cell equal to 6,000. Or I could say, hey, make it equal to 6492, but that actually won't work either, because when this changes, so does this one. So by the time this reaches 6492, the other one will have reached some other number. So the trick is to set up a difference cell, which is the difference between the two cells that you would like to be the same, because when they're the same, their difference is 0. And that is something GoalSeek can do. So let's say I want to find this first intersection point around 40,000 or so. I start with a number around 40,000. I go to my difference cell. I run GoalSeek on it. I set it equal to 0 by changing this guy, and hopefully this 57 finds exactly where they're the same. Check it out. 45,425. They are exactly the same if I play more decimal. So that's a really cool trick you can do with GoalSeek to make two calculators have the same output. You have this third cell that's the difference between the two, and you GoalSeek it to 0, and we get exactly where it is, as opposed to my graph, which is roughly where it is and good enough for multiple choice. But if you ever want more precision, that's how you could do it. Now, speaking of precision, GoalSeek type questions on an exam or homework, they're always multiple choice, so you don't have to worry too much about precision. I do want to point out that, let's say we were doing this question with the 10%, and we get that guy as our answer. That might not be one of the multiple choice answers. And the reason why is because there are other values that also equal 10% up to 2 decimal places. For example, let me just shift this by just a little bit. Yep. So I rounded down a bunch, still 10%. And basically what's happening here is that the number I just rounded to, it's not quite 10%, but up to 2 decimal places, it is. So when you're doing GoalSeek questions, just be aware that your exact answer might not be one of the options. Just pick one of the closest, and if you want, you can even plug it in. Just plug it in and see if it is still 10% or whatever number you're looking